year. And that was done in an effort to keep as many of our faculty and staff on board to serve the students. And even with that effort, we've had to go further, and some institutions have indeed had to lay off people or eliminate positions and so on. And without exception, I think we've all frozen positions. And
Dean, I think, excuse me, but I think when you mention the fact of laying off people and the possibilities of tight money, you also are talking about what many people talk about, the graying of the teaching faculty. Now,
Absolutely.
you've got a large number of people who fall within those categories.
Yes.
And I think it's important that we talk about that this morning, because I think it's a problem that's not generally talked about. And I wish the two of you would share the information that you have as business officers in reference to the people who are just about retiring and the kinds of problems that you are encountering and that your colleagues are encountering dealing with this graying of the education establishment.
Well, you're absolutely right. This is another thing that is of uppermost importance, not just in Tennessee, but nationally, that's facing higher education. Across the nation, there have been a number of studies done, and it has been determined that generally the tenured faculty at universities and colleges are retiring at an average age of 63. So if you look at the age of our current faculties throughout the nation, and this is true for Tennessee as well, it's really alarming that as much as 25% of our faculty, tenured faculty, could be retiring over the next 8 or 10 years. If you look then to the next 13 or 14 years, as much as 50%, as many as 50% of our tenured faculty conceivably will be off the college campuses and out of the classrooms. That's serious. You know, it's mind-boggling that we're going to lose all this expertise, this tremendous experience over the next 13 or 14 years.
Well, of course,
and it's kind of creeping up on us.
Has there been any kind of suggestion as to what we might do in order to keep from losing that part of our experience?
Well, there's been a few things. For example, some states have looked at phased in retirement plans, for example, to encourage faculty to stay on and phase out, you know, towards retirement. Encouraging new faculty to come in and go back to the salary issue, because the better salaries we can pay young faculty coming in to replace some of those and build, you know, add new faculty to replace the ones that might be retiring. So those are a couple of things that have been discussed nationally.
Now, what about scholarships? And I'm sure that the two of you are very, very concerned in terms of the money that is available for students through scholarships, aid, and various other kinds of grants. Let's talk about scholarships and some of the problems or some of the successes that we're having. Let's start off with you, Mr. CHarkleroad.
Well, we have, you know, the average cost of attending a public school in Tennessee will run $5,000 to $6,000. It varies from school to school, but $5,000 to $6,000 a year. That's for the student. It does not count the state supplement, you know, which comes through the state appropriation. That's the cost to the student. And much of that is provided now for many students through financial aid programs. Many of them are federal. For example, the Guaranteed Student Loan Program, the Stafford Loan Program, the Pell Grant Program, and so forth. One of the most expensive things that go into a university today is the cost of room and board. Many times when you think of cost of education, you think of the tuition, which is very, you know, or the maintenance fee, what we call in Tennessee, at least the maintenance fee or tuition. But the room and board is a very important part of a student cost. And so we need to continue to provide for that. And that is a very important aspect. Most students, for example, at the campus of Tennessee State, where I'm vice president, many students rely on financial aid, and it's very important to be able to get an education.
Dean?
Well, I will say that the federal program, the Pell Grant program, is probably the largest, I guess, supply of funds for students on financial aid with needs across the nation. And it's my understanding that with the new legislation and the new plan nationally that's come out, will indeed provide more funds for the students that are at the very bottom of the economic ladder, so to speak, the poorest in the nation. And yet what is alarming is that somewhere up in the middle, when you get up to the beginning of the middle class or the middle class of American citizens, many of those students, and I have seen numbers that somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 600,000 of those students that currently qualify for Pell Grant will no longer qualify, and that's alarming to me and to our association, that we will have these students that suddenly do not get this very important source of financial aid.
Now, of course, if they can't get that source of financial aid, it means that in many instances they can't attend school. And this ought to be a very, very pressing issue, not only for business officers, but for everybody, because everybody depends upon the students. Is that correct?
That is absolutely.
No, Mr. Harkleroad?
Well, I think, you know, it's important, you know, as the funds are available, it obviously gives more students opportunity for higher education. Now, some might be able to work and delay their education, but it really, the funds, there has to be funds available for help defray the cost of higher education. And that's very important not only to the student who will hope get a degree, then will be able to have a better life, but also to the public because of the economy. The students then would be able to give back through their training and so forth to the community where they live, and be able to add back to that institution, hopefully through their work. And so, yes, the cost of education and the financial aid the financial aid related to the cost of education is very important, and there needs to be ways to replenish what we might lose due to some lost programs.
Now, is there a tradition on the part of the National Association of College and University Business Officers of perhaps going on record, since we've talked about the scarcity of funds, perhaps going on record in terms of what ought to be done for scholarships and loans and other areas? Or do they simply, do you simply meet and have seminars and go back home and wait until the next meeting? I mean, what do you attempt to accomplish during your sessions here?
Not at all. The NACUBO is a very active association, and in addition to these annual meetings and training sessions that are carried on throughout the nation all year round, as a matter of fact, there is a staff in Washington, D.C. that is a very powerful lobbying effort, and one of the important duties of that central office is to alert states, business officers, and presidents of colleges and universities of you know, any change in legislation that will affect either negatively or positively enrollments or anything about funding for education. And they're on top of these issues, and then by disseminating this information to individual colleges and universities, as I think Clay said, there's probably a membership of more than 2,000 institutions. So you're dealing with a lot of people. They get this information out, and then we're encouraged, the presidents, to respond, and they do, and the various college boards directly with their legislators, and have a tremendous impact upon the laws that are made regarding higher education. So this is an important function of this organization. It's a very powerful group.
Very good.